Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Board Game Captain, and today I'm going to be counting down my top 10 favorite Twilight Imperium races. Now, I know what you're thinking. That is actually most of the races in the box. There's only a handful that aren't within my top 10. In 4th edition, there are 7 races that did not make it to my top 10. But all of the 10 races are races I really like and races I will go out of my way to play once in a while. They're all races I very much enjoyed in 3rd edition, though in some cases have been much improved, and I've actually rearranged where my order would be at for 4th edition. So for those who are unfamiliar, Twilight Imperium is one of the most iconic board games in all of modern board gaming. It's gone through 4 editions, the current, of course, being Twilight Imperium 4th edition, or TI4, and it is a enormous sort of conquer the galaxy sort of game where each player takes on one of the factions and you fight it out militarily, politically, economically, etc. in a giant, huge, all-day affair to try to conquer the galaxy and become the new rulers of the entire galaxy. The game is huge. The game is epic. The game usually lasts around 6 hours or even more, which is why I say it's like an all-day affair, but it is worth it because I have never had a bad time playing Twilight Imperium. It is the sort of thing that you really do set aside a whole day for and invite people over just to play it. Before we get started, I just wanted to draw attention to the shirt I'm wearing, my I drink and I game, it's what I do shirt with my mug of beer and my D20 there. This is one of the shirts on our Teespring store. If you'd like to buy this or any of the other shirts or mugs on our Teespring store, of which there are plenty to choose from, there is a link to our Teespring store in the description down below, and there will also be a link to it at the end of this video. Now, without any further ado, let's get into my top 10 favorite Twilight Imperium races for TI4. Number 10. So, my number 10 race is the Emirates of Hakan. Now, the Emirates of Hakan are a race of cat people from a desert planet, and what these guys are about is they are 100% all about that trade. These guys are the masters of galactic trade. So first off, their first ability is Masters of Trade. You do not have to spend a command token to resolve the secondary ability on the trade strategy card. So right there, that's huge, because trade is something that happens a lot, and not having to spend a token is going to save you tokens. You're going to be able to do trading every time somebody does trade. Next, guild ships. You can negotiate transactions with players who are not your neighbors. So this is really cool, especially the larger the game is. Anything larger than a 3-player game, you can negotiate with everybody around the table, and that is really awesome. Now, in a 3-player game, this is a bit of a wasted ability because everyone is going to wind up being your neighbors anyway. But in a 4 or 5 or 6-player game, this becomes phenomenal. The more players, the better this is. And finally, arbiters. When you are negotiating a transaction card, can be exchanged as part of that transaction. So you can use your action cards as resources towards your negotiations. That is really, really cool. These guys are a lot of fun to play. Economically speaking, they're really powerful. They changed their abilities a little bit from 3rd edition to 4th. I really liked they used to have an ability in 3rd edition where they could just like nix other people's trade deals. But you know what? These are all still really cool, and I don't think they dropped on my top 10 list that far from the way they were on 3rd. Though I do think they have been nerfed a little bit. Number 9. So my number 9 favorite faction in Twilight Imperium 4th edition is the Yisrael tribes. Now, the Yisrael tribes are really sneaky and crafty and have lots of action card-based abilities. They're really, really cool. Let me tell you some of the reasons why you would want to have the Yisrael tribe. So first off, they've got this ability called scheming, which is really cool. It says when you draw one or more action cards, you get to draw an additional action card, then choose and discard one action card from your hand. And that's really awesome. Next, we have crafty, where you can have any number of action cards in your hand, no limit, and game effects cannot prevent you from using this ability. So there's no way to stop them from building up a huge hand of action cards to be able to just throw out at a moment's notice. I have had these guys really do well in later game combats where suddenly I'm throwing out action card after action card to really benefit me in the particular conflict. Being able to stockpile action cards and use them when they want to make these guys one of the trickiest and sneakiest factions, and that's why the Yisrael tribes are my number 9. Number 8. My number 8 is a very much more simplistic group, and I just like them for how deadly they can be, and that is the Sardac Noor. Now, the Sardac Noor are a group. They start with a fair amount of military power. They got 2 carriers, 1 cruiser, 5 infantry, and they have this amazing ability where they get to apply a +1 to the end result of each of their units' combat rolls. That's their only ability, and it's all they need, because this is deadly. These guys, I mean, they're just incredibly powerful. People dread getting into combat with you. And right away, you want to be manufacturing ships, ground troops, and sending them out and threatening people's borders, because these guys are scary as hell. Big insect people. Yeah, and that's why the Sardac Noor is my number 8 favorite faction in Twilight Imperium 4th Edition. Number 7. Now, the next faction is another one that I really enjoy for the military prowess as well, though it doesn't work quite the same way. It's a little more nuanced, and it is the Barony of Letnev. Now, the Barony of Letnev, one thing is, they start with a dreadnought out on the table, which is very intimidating. And then in addition, they have some really great abilities that involve them pumping money into their war machine efforts to really get lots of power. So the first thing is they got the munitions reserves. At the start of each round of space combat, you can spend 2 trade goods, and you can re-roll any number of your dice during that combat round. In a round where you're going to have a lot of dice, this becomes incredibly valuable. Oh man, is that great. Their next ability is Armada. The maximum number of non-fighter ships you can have in each system is equal to 2 more than the number of tokens in your fleet pool. So they are allowed to have larger fleets than the other races, and they can spend trade goods to re-roll dice in combat. These guys are fantastic, and they are deadly and scary. This is another group that, as long as you are prepped for the battle, as long as you've got some trade goods there and you've got a decent-sized fleet, people are scared to death to get into combat with you, and that is really cool, and that is why they are my number 7 favorite faction in Twilight Imperium 4th Edition. Number 6. Now, my number 6 favorite faction is very different from the last couple in that it's not about combat at all. It's about utility more, and that is the Ghosts of Kruse. So the Ghosts of Kruse, they're not incredibly impressive militarily, but they've got these great abilities that all revolve around wormhole manipulation. So first off, you got quantum entanglement. You treat all systems that contain either an alpha or beta wormhole as adjacent to each other, which means you can go in an alpha wormhole and come out a beta wormhole. How amazing is that? Because, you know, not always does both alpha and betas come up. Let's say there's just an alpha and a beta on the field. You can still use those to jump around, whereas other factions cannot. They have the slipstream ability that during their tactical actions, they get to apply a +1 to the move value of each of your ships that starts its movement in your home system or in a system that contains one of the wormholes. So when coming out of a wormhole or coming out of your home system, your ships can move faster than normal. This is really great for the home system for being able to speed ships up to the front lines when you need them there right after the turn in which you built them. And the final ability is the kruse gate. When you create the game board, instead of placing where you would place your home system, you place the kruse gate. And then your home system is off like in a pocket dimension that you need that kruse gate, which is a different kind of wormhole to get to. It makes it a little harder to assail your home system. And that is also it's just like a little perk, and it's really kind of neat and really kind of interesting. Yeah, these guys, now, I have a lot of trouble winning with these guys, but the reason they're so high on my list is I never have a bad time with them. Their wormhole manipulation and up speed when coming out of wormholes is really fun. Again, I don't think I've ever actually won with them, but I always have a good time playing the Ghosts of Kruse. And that is why the Ghosts of Kruse are my number 6 favorite faction in Twilight Imperium 4th edition. Number 5. My next faction is not militarily powerful at all, but they are interesting for a different reason. They are the Universities of Jol-Nar. Now, the Universities of Jol-Nar are all about science and scientific advancement. They're not about combat, though if you get enough upgrades to your ships, they might actually become a threat in combat, and they're going to upgrade their various scientific advancements way faster than any other faction on the table. You're basically guaranteed of that. So the first thing is the reason why they're not very good at combat. They have a negative ability called Fragile. Apply a -1 to the result of your unit's combat rolls. So yes, so they're not super good at fighting, but then you have Brilliant. When you spend a command token to resolve the secondary ability of the technology strategy card, you can resolve the primary ability instead. So with these guys, I never choose the technology strategy card at all. I let everyone else take it. And then I just keep being like, oh, I get the primary ability anyway. Oh, I get the primary ability anyway. And you will gain unbelievable amounts of technological advancements. Then they have Analytical. When you research a technology that is not a unit upgrade technology, you can ignore one of the prerequisites. This allows them to bypass some of the prerequisites, allows them to get some more advanced technology way faster. I usually find that I eventually come to a point where even though I don't want to attack my enemies because of that whole -1, my enemies still don't want to attack me because I have so many unit upgrades, so many general upgrades and technologies that they look over at the giant swarm of tech over me and they're like, yeah, never mind. And that is why they are my number 5 favorite faction in Twilight Imperium 4th edition. Number 4. My number 4 faction is one that can be a little sneaky, a little political, and quite defensive. And this is the Zucha Kingdom. Now, the Zucha Kingdom is one that gets lots of cool abilities that allows them to do interesting things. They've got the Peace Accord ability. This one can be a little sneaky. I like this. After you resolve the primary or secondary ability of the Diplomacy strategy card, you may gain control of one planet other than Mechatol Rex that does not contain any units and is in a system that is adjacent to a planet you control. Stealing a free planet? Yes, please. And then they have this ability called Quash, which basically allows them to spend 1 token from their strategy pool to anytime someone calls up a agenda, they can be like, nope, never mind, we're going to take the next agenda. And that is also really awesome, gives them lots of abilities in the areas of politics, but also they have some technological upgrades that make them good defensively, give them bonuses when they are being attacked. They are the kind of people that want to set up a good Cold War front and then wait for you to come and attack them and make you pay for it tooth and nail. These guys are a lot of fun to play. I've never had a bad time being the Zucha Kingdom, and that is why they are my number 4 favorite faction. Number 3. My number 3 favorite faction is due to a very unique ability and some really cool upgrades that they get later in the game, and that is the arborek. Now, the arborek are these like fungus aliens, and they have this ability called mitosis. Your space docks cannot produce infantry at the start of the status phase. Place 1 infantry from your reinforcements on any planet you control. So your guys, they just kind of reproduce naturally. You just get free troops. And at first, it can be a little tough because when you want to build more troops, you're not getting them as quickly as you might like. But later in the game, you wind up with huge amounts. And they have some technological upgrades that allow them to get more troops and also to spread troops without carriers from planet to planet and take over planets. And these guys are freaking awesome for that. It's a little bit of a finesse faction. They can be a little tough to use, but they are really interesting. And this is another one win or lose, never had a bad time being the Arborek. And that is why they are my number 3 favorite Twilight Imperium faction. Number 2. My number 2 faction is an incredibly powerful faction. It is one that generally people consider to be one of the best in the game. Though, of course, I've ranked these by how much I enjoy them, not by how powerful they are. But this is also a very enjoyable faction to play, and they are the Embers of Muat. Now, the Embers of Muat are very powerful for a couple of reasons. One reason is that they start with a weaker War Sun at the beginning of the game. I mean, they're the only faction that starts with a War Sun. Now, it's weaker in that it's slower. But later, if you eventually get the War Sun upgrade, they will become a full-fledged War Suns. In addition, they have one ability that allows you to spend an action to spend 1 token from your strategy pool to place either 2 fighters or a destroyer from your reinforcements in a system that contains your War Sun. So to a limited extent, your War Sun is a mobile factory because it allows you to make destroyers and fighters, and that is really awesome. And their other ability is called Gashai Physiology, and they're allowed to move through systems with supernovas. This is just a very utilitarian and awesome ability because no one else can move through systems with supernovas. It makes them able to come up at your enemies through systems that they would not have expected, a back door through. Like suddenly you're like, oh wow, you can do that? And you're like, yeah, I can do that because I'm the Embers of Muat, and that's why they are my number 2 favorite faction in Twilight Imperium. And now it is time for number 1. It's time for my number 1 favorite faction, and this might surprise a few people, but the utility of this faction is just amazing. Again, win or lose, never have a bad time being the Clan of Sar. So the Clan of Sar is really cool because they're based around some really great abilities and a really great alternate version of a space dock. So they don't get a space dock, instead they get floating factories, and they have a movement of 1, so you can move them into a new system and then build stuff. This is a huge bonus they got over 3rd edition, because in 3rd edition they were not allowed to move and build at the same time. Now there's no restriction noted, so they can actually move and build at the same time, which makes them one of the most mobile front lines in the game because they can move their space docks with their fleets and then build some new ships to join the fleets there, as long as you don't get above your fleet supply. Now, their abilities that are really cool is, 1, they have an ability called Scavenge. After you gain control of a planet, gain 1 trade good. Early on in the game, where you're just like flying around and taking planets, you gain massive amounts of trade goods really fast to help supply your war effort. It becomes incredibly valuable. This will slow down in the late game when you would have to take enemy planets to be able to get trade goods, but still, it is a really good ability and a really great way to get going fast. The second ability is Nomadic, which is you can score objectives even if you do not control planets in your home system. So this is really cool because you're probably going to move your fleet and your factories out of your home system to get them towards the front line. So if your opponents sneak in behind and steal your home system, it doesn't really cause a huge negative to you because you're still able to score objectives, unlike other players. So yeah, the Clan of Sar is really cool. I think they're one of the most fluid and interesting factions mechanically. I love playing these guys, and that is why they are my number 1 favorite faction in all of Twilight Imperium. I loved them in 3rd edition, though they were nowhere near as good, nowhere near as competitive. And in 4th edition, they've jumped up my list all the way to my number 1 because they're so awesome. The Clan of Sar. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 favorite factions in Twilight Imperium 4th edition. So let me know in the comments down below, what are some of your favorite factions? What's your number 1 favorite faction in Twilight Imperium 4th edition? If you want to give me a whole top 10, put it in the comments down below. I'd love to read it. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see me do more interesting top 10s like this, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.